This government was elected on a promise of tackling the cost of living and growing the economy, and this is the second budget where it's failed to do either. Yeah. For millions of people struggling with higher bills, all this budget really offers is higher taxes. The OBR sets it out in black and white. Disposable income, living standards are down thanks to this budget. Surely the Chancellor should have learned from her first failed budget that you can't tax your way to growth. Under the Conservatives, the UK's tax burden reached its highest level since 1948 and it hit the economy. Yet under this budget, the tax burden will hit an all-time high. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is an alternative to all these Conservative and Labour taxes, and the shocking reality is the government knows it, and that's a new trade deal with Europe. Yeah! A major new deal to cut the cost of living and grow our economy. The truth is, Madam Deputy Speaker, Boris Johnson's Brexit deal has cost the Treasury £90 billion a year in lower tax revenue. Imagine if the Chancellor had adopted our plan to reverse those Brexit costs. Imagine how much more we could be helping families and pensioners across our country with the cost of living. Imagine how we could be ending the cost of living crisis today.
Order. I made it very clear earlier on, and you are a senior member of the House. No intervention should be made, nor will be taken. Eddick.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm happy to talk to him in the tea room afterwards. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government know the damage the Conservative reform Brexit deal has done to every family and every business across our country. And yet they choose to reject the single biggest policy for ending the cost of living crisis, turbocharging economic growth and boosting tax revenues without raising tax. A new trade deal with Europe, properly fixing our broken relationship with Europe with a new customs union. Growing our economy by freeing British businesses from the costs, barriers and red tape favoured by the Conservatives and Reform. Rather than trying to tax their way out of debt, as Labour is choosing, Liberal Democrats would grow our way out of debt. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be fair to the Chancellor, she has recently spoken about the terrible damage that the Conservatives' Brexit deal has done to our economy. The deal that promised to save us £350 million a week, but ended up costing the taxpayer £1.7 billion every week. But where is the Chancellor's urgency and ambition to fix the problem she rightly identifies? Today, she didn't even mention the huge hit to the Treasury from Brexit. She is like a doctor who has diagnosed the disease but refuses to administer the cure. Refusing to take up our plan for a brand new deal with the EU, a much better deal for Britain than anything the government has pursued so far, with a new customs union at its heart. Madam Deputy Speaker, everyone but the most extreme Brexiteers now realise what a costly economic disaster the Brexit deal has been. Whether you're a young family struggling with ever higher food prices, or a high street business just trying to survive the chance of the latest new cost or tax, people are understandably looking for a credible economic policy to change their futures for the better. And it's crystal clear now. Only the Liberal Democrats are providing the leadership on our economy people are crying out for. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are some measures the Chancellor has announced today that we do welcome. At last, she has decided to tax the big online gambling firms by raising remote gaming duty, as the Liberal Democrats have been calling for. Problem gambling is related to hundreds of suicides every year. So, of course, online casinos and the like should absolutely pay more tax on their huge profits. Her decision to scrap the rate clause is an excellent one. And I may not have heard the Leader of the Opposition, but I wasn't sure if she welcomed that. I hope the Conservative Party will welcome that. And the Chancellor's decision to scrap the two-child limit is excellent. It was in our general election manifesto, and I'm glad that she is now enacting Liberal Democrat policy. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's clearly the most effective way of lifting children out of poverty, and it will save taxpayers' money in the long term. And the biggest relief today for millions of families and pensioners is the action the Chancellor is taking to reduce energy bills, and we welcome it. But even after the Chancellor's changes, it will still leave the typical household paying hundreds of pounds a year more on their energy bills than 5 years ago. So more action will be needed. But we need action on energy bills that works. Reform and the Conservative Party pretend that the answer to rising energy bills is to scrap our climate commitments and stop investing in renewables. They couldn't be more wrong. The Conservative reform energy policy would put up bills and just make the UK even more reliant on imported fossil fuels with their volatile and high prices. That would be a disaster for our economy, a disaster for our environment, and a disaster for jobs, and a disaster for people struggling with energy bills. Madam Deputy Speaker, a major winner from reform's energy policies would be Vladimir Putin. Now, that might explain why the Honourable Member for Clacton is so keen on it. So I urge the government, don't listen to the Conservatives or Reform. Be more ambitious in cutting people's energy bills. Take up our plan to cut energy bills even more right now and to cut them in half within a decade, finally giving families and pensioners the relief they need from this cost of living crisis. Madam Deputy Speaker, while there are some things to welcome, which I've just done, there are quite a lot of measures in this budget that will cause a lot of pain and unfairness, all of which could have been avoided if the Chancellor had gone for growth with Europe instead. Her plans to tax salary sacrifice will be hugely damaging to savings and pensions, and it looks like it's another NI hit on workers, Madam Deputy Speaker. And why, when the electricity vehicle market still needs a boost to get going, is she taxing electric vehicles? And if she wasn't spending £1.8 billion on digital ID, many of these tax rises would not have been needed in the first place. And her failure to U-turn on the family farm tax is a huge error. Madam Speaker, if the Chancellor was really looking to tax those with the broadest shoulders, then why not put a windfall tax on the big banks who are literally making billions at the taxpayers' expense due to a side effect of quantitative easing? But the worst tax hike of this budget by far, the biggest tax rise of this budget, is the Chancellor's decision to repeat the Conservative policy of freezing income tax thresholds. Freezing these thresholds reduces the amount people can earn tax-free and hits the lowest paid the hardest. But I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, hearing the Conservative leader criticise it now rings incredibly hollow. And I think the member for Berkshire was objecting to her comments. The leader of the opposition cheered Conservative budgets after Conservative budgets that did exactly the same thing as the Chancellor did, raising taxes on the low-paid. The Conservatives dragged an extra 4 million people on very low incomes into paying income tax and an extra 3.5 million people into paying the 40p rate. And the OBR says this government is now planning to drag a further 750,000 low-paid workers into tax and nearly 1 million people into the 40p rate. So someone on the average salary is paying an extra £582 this year because of the Conservatives' policy, and under the Chancellor's plans, they will pay an extra £300 a year by 2031. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, contrast that with our record on income tax. We raised the personal allowance by £4,000. We cut income tax by £825 for millions of people and took 3.4 million of the lowest paid out of paying income tax altogether. It is clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Liberal Democrats are the only party that believes in cutting income tax for ordinary people. Labour and the Conservatives make them pay more. as well as adding income tax bane to families struggling with the cost of living crisis, this budget will also add to the cost of doing business crisis facing Britain's hospitality sector, where she went nowhere near far enough. Our high streets are suffering. Pubs, restaurants, cafes, caravan parks, zoos, even our beloved theme parks. They are struggling against higher business rates and the government's misguided jobs tax. The Liberal Democrats called on the Chancellor to help them with an emergency 5% VAT cut for hospitality for the next 18 months. That would have been a lifeline for some of our most beloved local businesses and for people's jobs, boosting local economies across Britain. And it is very disappointing that the Chancellor hasn't listened to our calls. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I say how disappointed I am with how little there was for carers in this budget? As a carer myself for much of my life, I'm determined to speak up for the millions of carers less fortunate than I am. Millions of family carers and care workers who make enormous sacrifices looking after loved ones. Carers who keep our NHS going. Carers who keep our society going. They deserve far more support from the government, and I will keep pressing their case. Now, I do welcome the Carers Allowance review, but it confirms our argument that the Carers Allowance system is out of date and is in need of urgent change, and we're yet to hear commitments to those changes. I welcome the decision to reassess cases where overpayment has caused huge hardship, but with the changes not coming into force for another year, the government must instruct the DWP to immediately suspend repayments during that delay and swiftly deliver compensation. More needs to be done to help family carers juggle their jobs with their caring responsibilities. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, we urgently need the Social Care Commission to actually start fixing the system on a cross-party basis and make sure our loved ones get the care they need. The Chancellor cannot claim to be supporting our NHS properly, however much money she puts in, while she and Treasury officials keep blocking the social care reforms that alone can transform the health service across the country and boost our economy. Madam Deputy Speaker, a caring society, a growing economy, a plan to drive down household bills, boost high streets and go for growth with Europe. That is the vision the Chancellor should have set out today. Instead, we got a low-growth, high-tax budget from a government that I fear just isn't listening.